You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series Doctor Who. And today we're going to give you the whole 9 yards about 73 yards, the latest 15th Doctor story. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom. And
Father Cory Sticha. Hey, Father Cory.
Can we do 66.7 meters instead? How's it going, Dom?
So, folks, before we get started, I want to encourage you to go to Apple Podcasts and write a review, or wherever you get your podcast from that let you give a rating or review. That really does help us, and we really do appreciate it. And please share the podcast with your friends. Help us grow this community. We hear great things back from you listeners about how much you're enjoying this, so let your friends enjoy it too. So please share the podcast. And I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy called Let's Science, which you can find wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/science. And I just want to, before we begin, I want a brief programming note. We will not have an episode next week. We will have 2 episodes the following week covering the next 2 episodes of the 15th Doctor's first season, Dot and Bubble, and then Rogue. So just when a podcast episode doesn't drop in your feed next Wednesday, don't worry. It'll be there the following Wednesday. All right. So we are talking about 73 yards, and that means we would like a recap, Jimmy.
In this episode, we get a Dr. Light episode focused on Ruby in the genre of folk horror. The 15th Doctor and Ruby land on the Welsh coast, and the Doctor mentions a Welsh Prime Minister named Roger ap Gwilym, who almost led the world to nuclear war in 2046. The Doctor then inadvertently breaks a magical fairy circle that someone built on the cliff top, and when Ruby looks around for him, he's gone. Ruby then notices an old woman standing what turns out to be 73 yards from her. The woman is making repetitive motions with her hands, but Ruby can't hear what she's saying, and no matter where Ruby goes, the woman is always 73 yards away from her. Ruby tries sending people to the woman to talk to her, but they all run off screaming and won't have anything to do with Ruby afterwards. This happens even with Ruby's own mother, who disowns Ruby and takes out a restraining order to keep her away. The same thing also happens with Kate Stewart of UNIT. Years go by, and in 2046, Ruby learns that Roger ap Gwilym is running for Prime Minister. She decides to save the world and volunteers for his campaign so that she can get close to him. After he's elected, Ruby learns that he's about to get a nuclear arsenal from Pakistan, complete with the launch codes, and he's going to declare the UK independent of NATO and then start a nuclear war. Ruby arranges to be 73 yards away from him so that the strange woman appears next to Gwilym. He hears whatever it is she says and runs away screaming and resigns from being prime minister, so the world is spared a nuclear war. However, the strange woman continues haunting Ruby. Decades in the future, Ruby is an old woman and is being taken care of in a nursing facility. As she is apparently dying, the strange woman comes closer, something supernatural happens, and old Ruby appears on the cliff top in Wales, when she and the Doctor first arrived. It turns out that Ruby herself was the woman 73 yards away, and she's able to influence her younger self to stop the Doctor from breaking the fairy circle so that timeline is averted, and the Doctor and young Ruby head off for a nice visit to Wales. The end.
Well, Cory, your overall impression of this one?
I really enjoyed this. This was a very well done story. It felt very much like a Twilight Zone, Black Mirror type story. You know, it was creepy. It was, lots of questions. It was just a very well done story. I really enjoyed this. I think this is one that's going to compare favorably to some of the best New Who episodes. It really was well done.
Yeah, I've heard people compare it to Midnight and Blink and some of the other ones. So, Jimmy, what do you think of this one?
I didn't like it as much as Midnight or Blink, which to me are the 2 best single episodes of Doctor Who ever. Mm-hmm. But I did enjoy it. It's a nice episode. I think the biggest flaw in it has an effective build. It has some nice misdirection. Like there's early on a scene in a pub in Wales where the locals are winding Ruby up for a big fake out. That's fun. I like the folk horror elements of this. I thought the moments where where Ruby's mom turns on Ruby is chilling. I thought when Kate Stewart gets brought in, it's like, oh, great. Now Unit's going to be involved and is going to solve this. And then Kate turns on Ruby. I mean, that was also very effective. I thought that Roger Ap William was effectively creepy. I really liked lots of it. The thing I didn't like is now they've acknowledged that they're playing more with the supernatural in the show. You know, Russell T Davies has said, you know, like in the past, when I put werewolves in the show, I had to make them aliens. Now I just make them werewolves. And so they're now comfortable with the supernatural in the show. And even Kate Stewart mentions that the supernatural is starting to show up on Unit's radar more these days. And this is apparently because of the salt trick that the Doctor did at the edge of the universe. It let the supernatural in. So all that's fine. But here's the thing. Just because something is supernatural doesn't mean it has no rationale. And they never give us a rationale for why Ruby becomes her own shadow in this. Why does this happen? I mean, it's somehow related to the fairy circle, but we need a little more. And we also need to know what it was that that old Ruby was telling people that would cause them to run away screaming and have nothing to do with her. And all they'd ever say when people asked them, why are you leaving? They would just ask her. And we never get an answer to that question. And okay, you get a pass with the supernatural in the same way you get a pass with advanced technology, in that you don't have to explain in real world terms how something works, but you need something. And on those 2 points, we didn't get something. And so I think that I would cite those as flaws in an otherwise outstanding episode. It would have, for me, been up on the level of Blink or Midnight if they had given us, here's what the old woman says, and it made sense. If they'd done that, it would be on that same level for me.
It feels like we're doing the J.J. Abrams mystery box thing where we leave something in the mystery box, and that's the compelling secret. I'm just like, kind of tired of the mystery box, frankly. I want answers to things now. I agree with you, Jimmy. I really, really liked this episode. I think that Ruby was really great on her own. Really liked her character in this, and all of the different elements. But yeah, just I wanted to know, like, what was she saying? Why would her own mother not just run away in fear, but look at her in disgust, just like Kate did? They had disgust on their face when they heard what the woman was saying, and it's just like, look, what's that about? Why 73 yards? Why? Like, there's a lot of. I'm okay with some questions being left, some mystery being left, but I needed more. Yeah.
That's at the core of the mystery, and we do need answers at the core of the mystery. We don't need every detail explained. The same way with high tech in a sci-fi show, we don't need the details explained, but we need the core to make sense.
Right. Exactly.
You know, I'm going to disagree with both of you guys on this one. The clues are there. You know, we know that Ruby has problems with abandonment. You know, that's a serious fear of hers. We've known that. That's a character arc of hers. We've got the two scrolls, the I miss you and rest in peace, Mad Jack. Well, obviously Mad Jack is that one is explicitly laid out. That's the prime minister. I think the clues are there. It's not explicitly spelled out, and it doesn't always have to be. Now, I haven't watched a lot of J.J. Abrams. I never watched Lost or anything like that. I don't even know. Abrams did Lost, right? I don't even remember. Yeah. It's so. I think the clues are there. It's not, the lady's not saying anything, because we already hear her at the end of the episode say, well, I'm sorry it took so long to get here, and oh, look at them, they're so wonderful. She's not really saying anything of substance. It's, again, this is, like, it's a supernatural, the fairy circle, or however you want to put it, is causing them to abandon her. And it's not the woman herself that's doing anything to cause that. Because even Kate Stewart, I mean, she's got her earpiece, but she's not anywhere near her, and she's having the effect of this.
Well, she hears it through the earpiece, but
but we don't hear anything through the phone, and Ruby doesn't hear anything through the phone. when her mom walks up to her, but yet she's got the phone there. So we don't hear anything from the woman at all. So I don't agree with you. I think the clues are there that the woman through supernatural means is causing people to abandon her, and it's playing off of Ruby's fear of abandonment. So the clues are there. I think it is one of those things that it isn't explicitly listed, and it doesn't always have to be. I hate to say it. It really always doesn't have to be.
Okay, so I respect your opinion. I disagree. I think in this case, they set it up in such a way that Ruby does hear things like over the phone when her mom is talking to the woman, but it's not clear. And so I think the way they set it up, especially the way they had people saying, ask her, because more than Mad Jack says that, so does a guy from the pub. And the disgust, which is particularly effective in chilling when Ruby's mom and Kate look at her with disgust. That sets up they believed something, and the woman has an explanation that will make sense. And if that's not what they meant, they needed to set it up differently.
Yeah. I have to agree with Jimmy on this one too. I'm okay with there being a mystery left on the table, but they've and I agree. I like the idea that that in some ways this is affected by Ruby's own sense of abandonment, her abandonment issues influencing it. So I like that explanation too, but I needed a little bit more. I mean, again, I like this episode. I like the story. I think maybe the Doctor Who fans are going to really be split on this. I haven't looked at a lot of the commentary, but I think there's some of us who are going to say I needed a little bit more, and there's going to be some going to say I liked them leaving it out and not explaining everything. And I could see both sides of that, but I'm on I needed a little more. Because I didn't understand.
Then let me toss this back at you guys. And what would she say to all these 4 different people plus Unit that would get all of them to either just run away? The first guy, Jack, I think his name was, or the first guy that went, John, the guy that went out and
the hiker
just ran away.
The first one, yeah.
Oh yeah, but I mean,
the hiker was Susan Twist, by the way.
Right. Yeah. Yep. We'll get to that one. Yeah.
So the 5. What would she say to the 5 of them? That all of them, even people who don't know Ruby from Adam, would turn and run away.
Well,
and look at where it just does. So I mean, it's so I throw that back at you,
and I have an answer for that. This is part of the promise that you make to the consumer of the story you're writing, that there will be a rational explanation. I don't know what that explanation is. It's hard to see exactly what they could say that would have that effect. That's what makes this intriguing. If it was obvious, it wouldn't be intriguing. So the fact that it's hard to figure out is what builds up the mystery and makes the reader or the consumer of the media interested in this aspect of the story. I think it would have to do with Ruby herself. It would have to be something about Ruby that to Ruby would seem totally innocent, but that or just false. But from another perspective would seem horrific. And I don't know what that would be, but you're promising me there is something like that when you repeatedly hit that story element and then ultimately you don't pay it off.
I think I have a theory, and I think maybe Davies plans to pay this off later when
that would elevate this in my estimation then.
Yeah. And that might be
that's what I was just thinking too.
Ruby's true nature. That could be, as they, and I don't know what that would be to this, cute girl from London, to suddenly, who seems really nice, to look at her in horror. So what is Ruby's true nature? And I think that might be what she's saying.
And they have been hinting so far this season that there is something more to Ruby than just this 18-year-old girl from London.
Right, exactly. And the fact that during this whole alternate timeline, she even makes a note of the fact that at the end, I used to be able to make it snow. So when we hear, whenever Ruby's origins would come up in the previous episodes, it would snow. This weird snow that could even pause.
Which happens in this episode too.
Right. But not in the alternate timeline after the very beginning. Like it starts to snow on the cliff tops, But after that, like she says, it used to be able to make it snow, and it doesn't anymore.
No,
well, they show snow. They show snow when she's abandoned by Cherry Sunday.
Yep. Yeah.
Through the skylight.
Yeah. So her mom, and I think Cherry is her grandmother. But
adopted mother.
No, her grandmother.
The grandmother's the one in the elderly lady in the bed.
The elderly lady.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
But when her mom says, she's talking to her mom on the phone, she's been kicked out. She's in the hallway, and she says, "I'm your daughter." And then her mom chillingly says, "Except you aren't, are you? Even your real mother didn't want you." And it starts snowing at that moment.
That's true. Carla is the
Carla. Yeah.
Carla. That's right.
So, as we get into this, there's a couple other things, interesting things that aspects of this. Just before we get into the meat of it, I want to bring up some behind the scenes little bits. But there was no opening title sequence. It went right into the story, which is very rare. I think it's only happened twice, two other times in Doctor Who. Russell T Davies says of this that it's the best thing he's ever written, which writers tend to do that sort of thing. But he said it
Midnight's
shares
better.
Yeah, it is. He says that he was inspired by a novel by an author named Alan Garner called The Owl Service. Both of them have plots centered around a mysterious magical woman haunting a protagonist after they discover and touch a collection of ordinary objects arranged to serve a hallowed binding role. So,
So speaking of that, they seem to be bending the meaning of the term fairy circle in this.
Yes, let's get that.
In real life, a fairy circle is like it could be what it's normally associated with is mushrooms. It's a ring of mushrooms that grow out from a center point, so that and as an explanation for this, people would say, well, fairies danced here, and that's why there are mushrooms here. And so that's what an actual fairy circle is. Turns out the phenomenon is actually caused by the growth pattern of mushrooms based on the mycelial connections between them underground. But here they're using the term for a magical semicircular artifact that people have created to cast a spell of some kind. What it looks like, if you haven't seen the episode, is if you've ever seen on a detective show those evidence boards where they connect things with string, that's what it looks like. It looks like a circular version of that in the grass.
Yep. Right. One of the interesting things that I noticed is as soon as Ruby starts reading the notes, the film changed. The color quality of the video changed. It got darker, like sort of less vibrant. They did something with the color correction on purpose, I would assume, to kind of as a visual cue that something has changed.
Yep, because that's the moment the Doctor disappeared.
Yes, when the Doctor
as soon as she started reading it,
everything gets a little less.
Yeah. She then, as she's walking towards civilization, since she can't make contact with the woman 73 yards away, and Russell T Davies apparently picked that number because that's the point at which you can kind of recognize someone, but also not recognize them. So he wanted that ambiguity. She runs into this hiker woman who's Susan Twist, and she has a notable conversation with Susan Twist, and she even kind of recognizes her. She says, "Haven't we met before?" And then she kind of dismisses it. But she's apparently
she met her in the future.
She met her in the future as the ambulance.
Right. Yes. So we're building something.
Yeah.
Clearly.
And Susan Twist is now in every episode. So she's going to be in every episode, and she's going to be involved in the payoff for this season. The other mystery woman character, Mrs. Flood, does make an appearance in the alternate timeline because she's Ruby's neighbor, but it's very brief. She just concludes, "Oh, this doesn't involve me," and goes off. I think she's a slower burn. I think she's something that's likely to get paid off in season 2.
Right.
Yep. So let's talk about the pub, because I really love the pub scene. It was, now this might have been my favorite part of the episode because I need to hear from our friends our listeners in Britain. if the Welsh have a reputation sort of like Americans have toward, say, New Orleanians, where they are sort of considered by some to be a little backward, but also kind of magical, supernatural. Like Americans have this sort of attitude toward New Orleans, like voodoo and, that sort of thing. I wonder if the Welsh have that same...
Which New Orleanians play up. I mean, there's a voodoo king and queen at the Mardi Gras festival.
Yeah. Yes, they do. And these Welshmen play up this stereotype.
And even going outside of being Welsh, this is a very rural area there by the coast. It's clearly a small town, and and so they kind of play on that as well.
It's not just the Welsh; it's people from the country in Britain are wrapped up in folk horror stories. Yeah. And so that's what they're playing up here. Although, and they do it effectively. I mean, they have, the Welsh people start asking Ruby questions in the pub about, and they're not all Welsh. I mean, this one woman doesn't have a Welsh accent,
right?
But they start asking Ruby questions about the fairy circle and you read the notes and what did the notes say? And one of them involved Mad Jack, and they start spinning this story about Mad Jack being a local killer. And now he's on the loose again. You freed Mad Jack. And then there's this banging on the door, and they're talking about it being the herald of Mad Jack, and it's very reminiscent of Midnight, where the creature on the outside is banging on the tour bus on the Diamond Planet, and we hear this ominous banging, and Ruby finally opens the door. And it's a guy delivering pasties, for the pub, and at that moment, the whole charade, they out themselves as we're just winding you up, and it was a very nice moment. Yep. It was a very effective build. It was very believable.
Yep.
Given the kind of show we're in, that this would all be true. Everything they're saying is true, and then none of it is. But then they have one of the women says, it's actually racist. People think that we're a bunch of witches and druids, and it's like, okay, that's not racism. That's
right.
That's not connected with a biological race. Yeah. That's some kind of cultural stereotyping, but it's not racism.
Yeah, racism stands in for everything these days.
Yeah. I did kind of laugh though, where they had the whole scene where Ruby's like, "Well, I don't have any cash. Can I pay with my phone?" And the bartender, who's a total jerk, that bartender is a total
very aggressive
jerk, and is just like, "Well, how do you pay with your phone?" And then sets down the square device there, the tap device. Although that is a legitimate question in rural areas. That is very much actually, even some cities they still don't have the tap capability. So
I thought we might have traveled in time.
Right.
Back to 40 years or something to before people had smartphones. So that was an interesting fake out. And then I wondered when she sets down the payment device, if it's like, have we just jumped a timeline, a groove in the timeline here? What's happening?
Yeah. There's a couple elements in this scene. I like the fact that when Ruby says, it said, the note said, "Rest in peace, Mad Jack," and then a thunderclap. Like, it's so stereotypical of horror movies, and
they even pulled the camera out so that you saw everybody in there as it's flashing.
But the old lady at the bar, who kind of is the chief winder upper.
Yeah,
she coins a new term, which could have been the title of the episode. For someone who keeps their distance, semper distans. The Latin for always distant. And she talks about.
I think it would be always distancing.
Always distancing. Yeah, in fact, I think she says that.
Yeah.
Because that NS marker on the end of instead of distant, it's distans, which is a present tense marker for a participle.
Mm-hmm. And then she describes the cliff tops as being a liminal space between earth and sea, which is very much, sort of in that folk witchcraft sort of thinking. So that
the doctor even kind of talks about that, how the sea and the land are at war at that location.
Yeah. And they bring up why the Wales have so many castles, because they were torture centers where the English soak the land in the blood of the Welsh.
Speaking of cultural stereotypes.
So like you said, it's just a great scene. So Ruby stays the night, and so she stays there waiting for the doctor at least a day and a night. I'm not sure how long, but eventually
she gets kicked out because of one of the locals, Josh, went and talked to the woman and won't come back and said, ask her, meaning ask the 73 yards woman why.
Right. So Ruby goes home, takes the train home, and on the train ride, keeps seeing the woman pop up all along the way. It was pretty wild.
It's like she's being pulled along with the train.
Mm-hmm. And so she gets home, talks to her mom, and
who's very helpful.
Yes, everybody who talks to her runs away. Well, they're Welsh people. So again, I want to hear from folks what the attitude of the English to the Welsh is. But then we have this amazing moment where the mom comes up with a plan. Okay, since you can't get close to her, I'll get close to her with the phone, and then you can hear what she's saying. And as we said, we had this amazing moment where once again, this is the second time where Ruby's mom, Carla, has been turned against her in an alternate version of events. We saw that in the Church on Ruby Road, and now we see it here again, which is an interesting fact that they keep going back to this. Again, alluding to Ruby's, as you've mentioned, Father, abandonment issues.
Yep.
Maybe.
Yeah, she's that fear of abandonment because, of course, being abandoned by her birth mother.
Mm-hmm. I don't know about you guys, but I cheered when I saw Kate. I always love to see Kate show up.
At least this time I did. I'm not always wild about Kate, but this was great.
Yes.
Yep. She even admits that she admires the doctor, adores the doctor, although she won't tell him that.
I'll never admit it if you tell in front of him. There was a QR code on the table between them. And there was a shot that included the QR code. I tried to use it. In fact, it's apparently incomplete, but someone completed it. You just needed to put like a little square in the corner or something, I guess. And apparently the graphic designer on Doctor Who made it a link to his website. And then
that's funny.
Later on, someone at the BBC made him link it to the Doctor Who page of the BBC. Like, oh yeah, you can't promote yourself.
It's probably, like me, most people probably thought, well, this is just the menu for the whatever pub they happen to be at.
Oh, I'm always looking for Easter eggs. I screenshot that.
There's a similar incident that happened in Babylon 5, where in one episode in the first season, Lanier is fixing Garibaldi's motorcycle. And Garibaldi comes in and the script just says he's chanting over the motorcycle. And specifically what he's chanting is Zabagabi, Zabagabi, which is the title of a Barnes and Barnes album that Bill Mumy, the actor who plays Lanier, did. And Joe Straczynski objected to that self-promotion. And so later when Bill Mumy and Peter David did a kids sci-fi show called Space Cases, they have an episode, I think it's a holiday everybody's celebrating, but they riffed on a bunch of Babylon 5 stuff. And one of the things they did was they had I think it was a holiday everyone's celebrating where everyone's greeting each other by saying Zabagabi over and over in the episode.
That's good. That is good. So when Ruby meets with Kate, it's been a year, we're told, that she's had this thing. And Kate mentions, I think you said this already, Jimmy, but that Unit is more and more having to deal with the supernatural, not just the alien. Again, so Davies is clearly telling us this is a different kind of Doctor Who than we're used to. This is
and it's actually a callback because the supernatural was in classic Who, like in the demons. It's not the demons themselves that are supernatural; they're aliens in that. But there's a local witch who we see controlling the weather.
Right, that's true. Yep. Was that in Wales?
No, it was in Western England, I think.
Okay.
Now, one thing too is Kate tells us that the Doctor has gone quiet So unit hasn't heard from him either. So this is another kind of clue that, okay, this isn't just the doctor, winning the TARDIS, whatever. He's gone.
Right. And Kate says something interesting. She says the timeline might be suspended along this event.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't sure what she meant by that.
It's in the context of Ruby asking how the unit is managing without the doctor to help with aliens and stuff.
Right.
And Kate says, by the skin of our teeth, but he's also gone quiet, and we think that the normal activity that they would expect has gone with the doctor. So the activity is less intense. I think that's what they mean.
Now,
so he may be like Blue Devil in the comics and have a weirdness magnet.
Yeah,
right. That's true. That's why we don't see all of that weirdness in our timeline, because without a doctor. We also unfortunately get another swipe at religion and faith in this one, where Kate says, humans make rules to explain the inexplicable, like seeing a sunrise and inventing God. Which is an unfortunate, once again, Russell T Davies gotten his atheism out on the show, which is unfortunate.
Well, it wasn't as bad, and neither was the gay stuff in this episode. There's only one tiny reference to that. So I want to give him credit for not overloading every single episode. But I like that they give an acknowledgement to there's legitimacy to humans pursuing this line of thought, because what Kate says is, I think it's Kate, is, humans make up a rule and then work with it. They make up these rules to define a situation and make it manageable.
Yeah. Yes. It was Kate. Yeah. So then as I mentioned, like she says, we can approach the old woman because we have all this special training to resist telepathy and, supernatural stuff. And so we'll be fine, and then move in. And that's when it doesn't work. It clearly is stronger than anything that unit has. And the look on Kate's face is like even more so than Carla's mom. That look, the actress,
just say Kate Stewart.
Yeah, Kate Stewart. But the actress does such a great job. Gemma Redgrave, just such a great job of conveying that disgust when looking at Ruby.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, what is going on? I mean, it really drew me in to like, what is this mystery?
Yeah. We're really pointing at Chekhov's gun hard in this episode.
We are. So years pass. We see that, Ruby on her 30th birthday, Christmas, and on her 40th birthday, and she sees the woman outside, and we see that she's sort of come to terms with the woman, except this presence has affected her ability to have relationships. We see several boyfriends in succession talking about how she's always distracted and she never wants to go anywhere because she's afraid of getting on a plane or a ship, because what would that
What's
kill
going to
the
happen
woman
with the woman?
Right. And would it kill her? She has this sense of, if something would have happened to the woman, it would happen to her. So she doesn't want to go. There was a funny line which
of course we find out at the end is the case. The woman is her. So
yeah, her instinct was right.
Yeah. What I like in that sequence where we see her like dating three guys in succession is at the end, it's 2046. She sees Roger Ap William on TV, and all of a sudden she stops the date and she says, I finally realized what I need to do. And her date says, like, what's that? And she says, I'm going to save the world. and I just, all of a sudden she has purpose, and it's great. And she's like taken agency. She's determined now. She goes outside. She sees the woman, waves at her and says, we've got work to do. So she's already figured out what she's going to do with the woman.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I love that determination. She then goes and volunteers at his campaign and becomes a campaign worker. She gets close to him. He's apparently a womanizer because he's hitting on another aide.
I want to. Can I stop there?
Yeah.
Because my wife and I had a dispute about this point because she didn't understand what was going on with Marty, the young woman, and I said, I thought it was clear. He is a politician who's been assaulting and or somehow
misusing his position.
Yeah.
Right. With this young woman who didn't want to be in this, she clearly was not happy. And at the victory party, she's over in the corner and Ruby goes to talk to her and she says he's a monster. So I was just wondering, did you guys get that this was going on?
Oh yeah.
She is, to use a kind of term of art these days, she's a vulnerable person. She's under his authority. He's misusing his position. Okay. She's basically Monica Lewinsky, only less willing.
Yep.
And then at the moment in that stadium where Ruby's going to put her plan into place, she waits and she apologizes to Marty.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think she stopped and didn't do things right away? Why did she wait?
Because she probably had the ability to get in this position before, but she never took advantage of it until this point.
But why? Why did she wait to this moment and not when she first met him?
Because she didn't yet have confirmation. Because it's at the stadium that she learns, in 2 days he's getting a nuclear arsenal from Pakistan with the launch codes. Yep. So now he can put his nuclear, and they've hinted, like there's a moment earlier where he's being interviewed by an actual interviewer in Britain who they've aged by 20 years.
Yeah.
Where the interviewer asks him at one point, do you actually want to fire a nuclear missile? Because of what he said. And Roger looks stunned, and then he says, we can cut that part out, right? and so he does have some buried apocalyptic homicidal tendencies. And it's at the stadium that Ruby learns he's now about to have the ability to act on him, and the girl who's closest to him confirms it and says he's going to launch.
And how great is it? It was a soccer pitch, because that would be the equivalent of, say, like a football, American football stadium for an American audience. You, like, as a fan, if you watch these games, what 70 odd yards would look like. And so you get her on the field, and it's funny, she's backing away and they're like, stop. Like, why? Like, don't you want her further away from him, even though she's doing something strange? But, that's just part of the story, I guess.
I like the little device she's using, though, where it's hooked up to her phone and she's able to use rangefinder.
Yeah, it was very good. And so that's when she puts her right next to Roger, Mad Jack. And when he's being interviewed at 10 Downing Street after his resignation, they ask him why. He just says, like Josh from Wales, ask her. And again, we don't know which her does he mean. And so it's very interesting to see that would cause him to resign and to leave public office and everything.
And that's where I question whether or not it's something that the woman is actually saying that's causing them to do this. Because what would she say about Ruby that would cause him to resign as prime minister instead of have her immediately locked up and throw away the key as prime minister?
Powerful? I don't know. Yeah, or she's some being, I don't know. Or removing the perception filter that might be around Ruby.
Because I don't think that he looks at her. I think he just runs away.
Yeah.
As soon as he starts talking to the woman, and then just immediately everybody clears the stage.
As with Josh, I think he means ask the woman.
No, I know that. But I mean, as far as, what the woman is saying, if that's the important part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why I think they need to give us an answer on that. They've repeated this too many times. They built it up really big. It's Chekhov's gun, and they don't fire it.
Yeah, it's like, and that's right. That's my objection is they just leave it without. I don't know.
So we all have different opinions on this.
We retread that one. We've already talked about that. So what the other question I have is, was it Ruby all along, just like Agatha? Sorry. From WandaVision. Was it Ruby, always Ruby, the old woman?
Apparently, yes.
Become Ruby?
Yeah.
No, it was always Ruby. It's a time travel loop.
Yeah. I liked when she was in the nursing home or whatever it was at the end of the hospice, and says to the nurse, I used to be able to make it snow. And the nurse is just like, that's nice, dear.
Yeah. I was thinking of deathbed vision scenes and so forth, because the nurse asked, do you need anything else for the night? And she says, I used to be able to make it snow, which is a non sequitur. And it's like, okay, that's nice.
I get a kick out of that whole scene where, well, the lights are set up for you. If you need it at night, just say lights. And Ruby's like, we've had that when I was a kid.
yeah, right. We can do that now. So in the end, she goes back and stops the doctor from breaking the fairy circle. Now,
so what happens specifically is, now that old Ruby has shifted perspective to back when young Ruby and the doctor first arrived, old Ruby is now, she's at first kind of babbling about, it took me a long time to get here or something, but then she says, don't step. And she repeats that a couple of times, and young Ruby picks up on it enough on some level. I don't know if it's meant to be conscious or not, but she picks up on it enough to stop the doctor from stepping on the fairy circle and breaking it.
Right.
So what happens to Roger Ap Gwilliam? Because we've reset the timeline. Does he still become prime minister?
Maybe. So there's a very strong possibility of that, because the doctor mentions that before he steps on the fairy circle.
Yeah, Ruby saved one timeline from a nuclear war. Fortunately, what the doctor said is he only led the world to the brink of a nuclear war, not that he actually caused one.
Okay, right. Good. Yeah, right. Yeah, that was because I was thinking, or was Roger only there because they broke the fairy circle? But no, he was. They mentioned it before. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts on this one, Father Cory? Anything we haven't talked about?
Just a mention of a 2031 nuclear war, or Russian war, excuse me.
Great Russian War.
Yeah. And then I had to laugh because they couldn't drive their Land Rover any closer because you can't get a signal for the engine this far out. Yeah, that's not a vehicle I'm going to want in year 2046.
Not in Montana.
At all. No. There's a lot of places you can't get a signal for anything that far out. So,
how about you, Jimmy? Any other further notes?
Well, I just think that it's unfortunate that Harriet Jones wasn't still prime minister in 2046, or none of this would happen. But someone caused that golden age not to happen.
Exactly.
Harriet Jones, PM.
We know who you are.
I love the Dalek version, where after she's out of office and the Daleks break into her as she's broadcasting on this sub network, and Harriet Jones, former prime minister. Yes, we know who you are. Yeah.
That was good. All right. So I guess that does it for 73 Yards. And before we go, I do want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Doctor Who, including Joanne S., Steve N., Iris V., Sean B., and Gretchen L. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What did you think of 73 Yards and any of the things that we talked about with regard to it? Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page. Send us an email to drwho@sqpn.com or visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. Or you can watch the Secrets of Doctor Who on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia and leave a comment there. We'll be back next time, like I said, in 2 weeks, when we'll be discussing Dot and Bubble and Rogue. Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thank you, Dom.
Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thanks, Tom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, apparently next week we're getting Christianity.